Welcome, everybody. Welcome back, or welcome for a first time. We'll give everybody a minute or two to get settled. Good afternoon, good morning. Uh, yeah, we'll do quick intros, some housekeeping stuff, and then arguably our favorite topic to talk about. How do we get more money from these colleges after we've been after the initial offer here, right? Appealing, and of course, understanding award letters, helping families understand award letters. Um, okay, so I guess by way of relatively brief introductions, my name's Matt Carpenter. I'm a founder at College Aid Pro. Been doing this for 20 years, almost on the nose. And this is again, like I said at the top, maybe one of the most rewarding parts of the process, in my opinion. Like number one, we've already got a win in that the family's been accepted into these colleges, right? They've been offered something. And now how do we go back and get a better deal? And there's this is a pretty layered process, fairly sophisticated. So we're going to walk you through our playbook, right? And we have a ton of experience with this. We continue to get better every year. This year has been our best year ever in terms of getting better deals from these colleges. And again, we're an open book. We're sharing our playbook with everybody, and that's what the point of today is to walk you through our process. And it's not universal, right? Certainly it changes based on the college, based on the student, the family. But again, I think we'll do a real good job explaining some a variation. So I guess I'll start with the other founder. And by the way, I'm just north of Boston at our office in Salem, Mass. And we got Uncle Bill Rabbitt down there in Jersey. And Bill, you want to say hello and then kick it?
Yep. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. Excited to be back here. Bill Rabbitt, one of the co-founders of the company, pushing 20 years in this space, located in central New Jersey, which some people don't believe in a central New Jersey. It's either a north or a south. I disagree. And we are buried in snow. So, as I know, Massachusetts, unlike you, Peggy, out there, probably sweating, got the air conditioning on. But thanks for being here. I'm for the most part going to stay out of. Yes, I got a central believer. I got people from Philly don't believe in it. Anyways, I'm going to stay out of Peg and Matt's way here for the most part, but I will be in the background answering any questions. So throw them in the chat or use the Q&A rather. That's just little easier to manage. But even if you throw it in the chat, I'll try to answer, and I'll stop Peg and Matt here and there if I think it's uh, kind of noteworthy for them to talk it out live type of deal. So please go ahead and do that. Fire away at will. What I will kind of share right off the bat, I'm going to put in my scheduling link and also my email address. So obviously we're in a one-to-many kind of event here, which is great, and we can go over a lot of things. But if you want to schedule some time for a one-to-one, please jump on my schedule or shoot me an email. I would love to kind of chat with you on a one-to-one basis, see how we might be able to help supplement all the great work you guys are doing anyway. So, yes, I will kick it to you there, Peggy.
Yeah, so first time I'm on the professional development, so excited to be here. Kudos to you guys for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this. It's great. So super happy to be here. Just real quick, my background is in the finance area. I'm a financial planner at heart. I have twins, long done with college. That's how I decided to really go deep in this space specifically of college financial planning. Had my own business for almost a decade, always knew Matt and Billy. And long story short, 8, 9 years in, it made sense for me to join CAP. So now I'm the director of education here. This is what I love to do. This is what it gets me out of bed. So yeah,
Peggy,
we're all excited to be here tonight.
and you're the fairy godmother of financial aid, right? It's
Yes, that
important.
is
It's
my.
important that
I did
people.
not. I did not give myself that title, but the boys did. So
You
I happily accept
Yes, it
it.
found you. Yeah, the title found you. All right, beautiful. And this is being recorded, right? If you have to jump, you guys will all get the recording. If you were not able to join last week and you just heard about this course, this is a three-part course. You will get last week's recording and slide deck. And then after the last part, which is 2 weeks from today, you'll get all housed in one place, kind of a document and a certificate as well for everybody that completes it. So let me just quickly show you something to get the juices flowing. I hope, pun very much intended. That will make sense in a second here. And this is also this is how seriously I take getting me specifically getting as much money as possible from colleges. So let me just share my screen. Okay. And let me hit.
Yeah, honestly.
You think that hurt? Try overpaying for college. Never accept the college's first offer. You can always squeeze more out of them. So that's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to squeeze more out of them. And sorry, last. If anybody shoot us a note, if anybody's going to be at the Thrive conference for independent schools in Seattle this week, I'm actually jumping on a flight to head out there in just a couple hours here. So if anybody's going to be in Seattle, please let me know. I'll show you how to play Lime Eye, Lemon Eye. Pretty simple game. But we're going to do a little cappy hour. We'll take you out for open bar. So if you're going to be out there, please shoot us a note here. But Peggy,
You will not be expected to squirt lemon in your eye. My husband is
Right.
blind in one eye, so I could never get him to do it in his good eye. So
Hey, you didn't see the slide deck? That's step number one to a successful appeal. Get the lemon or lime out.
all right, let me share my screen here. So Matt and Billy shared their co-founders at CAP here. And you know what I like to emphasize here, empowering families to shop smarter for college. They truly are shopping for college, and that's you guys are literally fundamental in this. So we're so excited to be able to be here and educate you. All right, we already saw this puppy. So let's dig in here. Big thing that we always have to talk to families about, and I'm sure you get this as well, is people say, you know, hon, I don't want to complete these forms. They're a pain in the butt, and my sister didn't get anything, and my neighbor told me XYZ. And so we really kind of try and hit home with families why they should be completing these forms. I know you all get this, but there might be a few things here that you might say, oh, that's another thing I can say to families if I'm kind of getting this pushback. People have this idea that that they're not eligible for need-based aid, and some people truly are not, and they're right. But as school gets more expensive and as people listen to family and friends, not all the time are they right. And it's not because they're dumb, it's just because they just don't know what they don't know. So that's the first thing. Some schools, if you don't have those forms on file, there's no merit aid consideration. And for some of these families, for all the families where need-based aid is truly off the table, like an SAI of 200,000 or whatever, that's the name of the game for discounts. So they could be leaving, you know, well into 5 figures, potentially 6 figure discounts on the table because they didn't submit, like at an NYU, for example. It also, for a lot of schools, it's the only chance for them to say, hey, I need some help. So things can change, life can change. COVID happened, and people that maybe weren't eligible, all of a sudden, their business is shut for months and their finances are completely different. And schools could say, well, you know what, sorry, you told us for freshman year you didn't need anything. Also, consideration for appeals, which is, you know, near and dear today, right? This is what we're talking about. One of our experts on our team, Mike Hinderman, who's the director of scholarships at Oklahoma at OU, he basically says, you know, hey, if we don't see that they've taken loans, which ties into the next bullet, or entertain that, then and submitted forms, both, like, how hard up is this family, really? So all these things go on behind the scenes at the college. So really stress with your families. No, it's a bit of a pain, especially the CSS profile, and that's why we're here to help. But um, please submit the forms. So the chronology of this: student gets in, yay. And then this financial aid award letter comes from the Office of Financial Aid. A lot of families, and rightly so, get confused. They tell us, I have my offer, and they send us something that says, congratulations, you got the Provost Scholarship. That's great, but that's the merit part from the Office of Admissions. We got to wait for the whole enchilada from the Office of Financial Aid. So these are the key instruments that you'll see vehicles on there. Grants. That's the need-based part. Unfortunately, and I just saw this 2 days ago, a school was calling a grant a scholarship. So it's not always clear, is this need-based? And if it's not clear, then they have to dig in. I'll show you an award letter in a minute, why it's so important to understand. You see the word grant, then you can feel good about that it's need-based. Can be federal, state, those are obvious. But then most of the money at these more expensive schools comes from the institutional grants, from the college. That's why this SAI matters. That's why those forms need to be submitted. So scholarships, in a perfect world, that word is used for the merit side. So doesn't matter about how much money they make. Bill Gates's kids can get merit scholarships. What's wonderful about them is usually, and if they don't see it in the fine print, or it's not made obvious, which a lot of colleges make it very obvious, that it's for all 4 years, make sure they verify that. Some schools will throw in a 1 year, especially on appeal, and you don't want to make the assumption that it's for all 4 years. Based on grades and test scores, not all the time though. There can be other things that they're looking at for the kids to give the scholarships. And then they have to maintain a certain GPA. They don't want kids on academic probation getting merit scholarships. It's not a 4.0. Then work study. That's a federal program. It's a need-based form of aid. It'll be a dollar amount on there, and then the student has to go and get work. Loans. We all know about loans, right? There's government-backed loans, and that's what we have on here, the direct federal student loans, as well as the PLUS loans, which are for the parents. There's also other ones, but that's not that. These are the two that you will see. And I always tell parents, when you see loans on there, you know you're looking at a financial aid award letter. So let's dig deep here. The reason why we're taking a little time is they did a study a while back, and there's over 900 variations of these forms. So it gets very confusing for parents. So let's look at this one from USC. So they give you the total cost up here, and this is a year or so old. So this number is even higher now. They give you a nice itemized breakdown for the family to see all of that. And then they say, now we're at our new total. Okay. Then they give it itemized breakdown. And we've got some work study here, student loans, and the parent plus loan, which they call out separately. And then they estimate the remaining costs here. Okay. You see here, there's no grants, there's no scholarship. So that's the estimated remaining costs. And then they go down here and say the total financial aid is this $53,000. Well, that's all either work study, but most of it is loan. So the remaining cost for this family is $97,000. And that's what they need to understand, which sometimes they don't. Now let's look at Drexel. This is a great one because it shows a lot of all the different pieces I was talking about. So this is where grants versus scholarships are really important for people to understand. This 24,000, that's going to almost always be a 4-year. That's awesome. The grant, you've got the need-based grant, an estimated Pell because they didn't have the FAFSA yet, and an estimated FSEOG, another federal grant program. And then they do work study, and then this family has the need still after all the funds that they got from Drexel and Pell. So then they get the maximum subsidized, and then the ends up that every family can get. Okay. Matt, this is where you're gonna have you
Yeah, if I could.
stop sharing so you can do your thing.
Thank you so much. So you guys know this, right? And Peggy shared, I think, that kind of alarming data point that about, of our 4,000-ish 4-year undergraduate colleges, there's 900 different ways these award letters are presented. So many of them look drastically different. There's so much going on, and it gets very confusing to know what am I actually paying? What's a loan? What's merit that's going to be there all 4 years versus a need-based grant that could change from one year to the next for better or for worse. But it goes with this theme that we're constantly fighting against, which is this lack of transparency, right? And, oftentimes we've talked to more families than any of us would care to admit that think they're getting a full scholarship or close to it from UC Davis, uh, not finding out until it's too late that all the quote unquote financial aid they've got is in the form of a plus loan, right? And they just kind of saw that there was no balance due after their financial aid award letter. It's bait and switch, it's garbage. So that is another thing that we are fighting against, and I'll show you how we do that among some other things in the platform here. Now, last week we spent a lot of time focusing on the difference between the federal formula and the institutional formula, right? Colleges that only require, I want to do some review here because I know some of you are new, and in my experience, this isn't day one stuff for a lot of counselors, but colleges that just require the FAFSA, right? They use the federal methodology, okay? And of course, there's a variation within that. Public schools can be a lot different than private schools, for example. And then schools that, for the most part, use the CSS profile or require the CSS profile, they're institutional methodology schools. Now, there's some outliers. U Chicago, Princeton are institutional methodology schools that have their own financial aid forms. They don't use the CSS profile. But it's incredibly important that as consumers, we know what is the business model that colleges use that we are applying to, right? And that's very, very important information, especially as we get our financial aid award. Okay. So, for example, what we find, it's not terribly uncommon. This is a fairly common scenario here where the federal SAI can be higher than the institutional SAI. Okay. There's a lot of reasons we don't have to get, kind of lost in the minutia, but we do have to know what is our kind of base SAI within each one of these formulas. Why does that matter? Colleges like Amherst, like Bentley, like Boston College, like BU, like Dickinson, like Northwestern, like NYU, right? A lot of these schools that use the institutional methodology, if they find or if your federal methodology is higher, they'll anchor to that. So when they give you need-based financial aid, they'll say, "Hey, you guys saw your FAFSA. You saw that it was you got a $61,000 SAI. We meet 100% of need. So you pay $61,000 to get here." And that makes sense to people, right? When we submit our CSS profile or we submit our application to Princeton or U Chicago, we don't see our institutional SAI. Of course, that's by design, right? Because this is a great opportunity for colleges to make an additional $20,000 per applicant in this example. So we will, with 100% or success rate, go back to these schools and say, "Hey, you guys gave us an award based on the wrong methodology. You're an institutional methodology school, and you gave us an award, and you say you meet 100% need, and you gave us an award based on the federal methodology." So this is always the first place we want to look. Now, I'm going to show you how the technology will do this for you, but just from an education standpoint, it's really important to know that. And if I click on any school here, right? If I click on Boston College, and I just want to see this, if I go to this financial tab here, this is their business model. Okay. Right here is their business model. Okay. Their SAI basis, they are an institutional methodology school. So that's where we need to know that information, especially if they are giving us an award based on the federal methodology, because our federal methodology number happens to be higher. So no consumers know this. Colleges know that consumers don't know this, so they use it to their advantage. When we call them on this, I have never I've never not had a successful appeal when we've called them on this because they know they're playing games that they're not proud of. And when we call them on it, they make it right. Okay. But this is a sophisticated appeal, right? This is a sophisticated consumer that comes back and says, I know you're an institutional methodology school. You packaged me based on federal methodology. So before we get to the well, how do we actually appeal? The first thing that we need to know is what understanding our award. Like Peg said, this gets very confusing. So here's where we can do this, right? If I am accepted into any college here, and there's a few places I can do this, but I want to I want to compare awards. I want to compare apples to apples, right? I was accepted into the school, right? I'm just going to upload my award here. Let's see, give me 1 second. Oh, actually, Bentley's was already uploaded. I think I have Dickinson's, and I don't think that was uploaded here. Give me a second. Okay, so what I can do is, oh, that was uploaded successfully too. So I won't bore you with the details, but or I won't bore you with having to watch what happens. But it is simple as I take a picture, or I have my PDF of my award letter. They're just going to hit translate, okay? And it's going to take all these different ways that colleges present their award letters and put them into one uniform award, okay? So that they can understand apples to apples. And we just want them focused on what is your net cost before you are borrowing. Don't get distracted with work study. Don't get distracted with the plus loan. Don't get distracted with a federal direct student loan. What's it going to cost your family before you have to start borrowing? That's what's kind of mission critical here. And again, just let the technology do it for you. Okay. So families can just go in here and again, upload their awards. Like, of course, we're going to help them understand it first, help them compare apples to apples. And I think a pretty easy way to understand. But then we're going to tell you what is the likelihood that you can go back and get a better deal from these colleges. How much more should you be asking for example? So, we'll tell them that you have a strong chance at appealing to Boston College because they've given you an award based on your federal methodology. They're an institutional methodology school. Here's how much more you should be asking for. So again, this is where we want to make sure that it is rooted in again the technology, and you have an unbiased third party that is saying, hey, you didn't get an award that you should have gotten based on your family's profile and based on Boston College or University of Miami or whatever the school happens to be. So very, very important that again you all understand that this is a resource. Families know that this is a resource, and they're taking advantage of it, right, and getting a fair deal from these colleges. So now let's just say, right, and even if we tell you that hey, look at this is a pretty good deal, and oftentimes that is the case, right? This is what we would expect that a family that has your profile would get from this college. We still want to go back and appeal. So how, right? How do we do that? And Peggy, you can kind of walk us through that. Okay, we're going to go back and ask for more money. What are best practices? Who does it? Where should we focus our efforts? And that's
All right. All right. So yeah, let's dig in here. So this is what we're going to go through: when, who, should, and how to appeal. So let's knock these off one at a time. Should you appeal? Just like many things, Matt, Billy, and I always say to families, it depends. It really depends on a lot of moving pieces. The first piece of when is based on how they applied for admission. You guys know all about this. Is it ED? Is it EA? Is it rolling? Is it regular decision? And the thing to keep in mind is sometimes we're still appealing after they've put in enrollment deposit. So that can happen too. The ED ones, we started those appeals back in 2025. Early action, we're knee deep in it now. And as all of you know, these regular decisions, the dates are out where the different colleges and the Ivies are going to announce. That brings a whole nother bucket of appeals we always tell families, know ahead of time what's going on so that you can strategize now. And when you get that, you got in and here's your award letter, they're ready to roll. They're ready to hit the ground running to submit the appeal because time is of the essence. Because in an ideal world, they want to hear back from the colleges. They know what that bottom line is, and then they can look at affordability based on that. So what type of appeals? There's merit appeals, which is through the Office of Admissions. And then there's also the need-based appeals through financial aid. Some families that we work with, potentially there could be both, right? And there's different strategies, which I'm going to hit on, and best practices, depending on what you're hitting. And sometimes it's going to be walking through a family through both of them. So let's talk about the merit appeal first of all. The overarching deal is the merit comes from Office of Admissions, so that's where the appeal's gonna go through. For both types of appeals, you got to find out what their process is, because if you don't follow it, then they can kick it back and say, no, there's this form or whatever it is. And then that's obviously slows the process down. So that's something that families can be doing now. If they're waiting for regular decision letters to come in and then the financial aid award letter, know what that process is now. We always say with merit, you want the student leading the charge. You want the student to sit down, and I always tell families, don't overthink it. Write in your own voice, why do you want to go to this school? And not just it's beautiful or they have a really good business school. That's not specific. You want to really get in the weeds, and hopefully the student has talked to a professor or something that really grabbed them about the school. Because what the Office of Admissions wants to hear is, wow, this kid is really invested in this school. If we kick in some extra money, we're going to get that enrollment deposit. A little bit less net revenue, but they have all these targets, yield targets and net revenue targets. They're very big businessy when it comes to this, and they're ready to give up some of that net revenue. Anything that's new that the admissions office wouldn't know, a new award, grades, any of that is great. And always during the appeal, send that documentation, because that slows it down when you're not sending it. Competing offers are a strategy in the merit space. Don't be shy. Don't include 10 of them. Usually, if you're crafting it around one competing school, you can send that, maybe two. That would be a one-on-one decision, but all of that should go with the appeal. I also tell families all the time, if the student knows that local rep that covers their area, that's a great person to talk to, because they're aligned with the family. The more kids from their area that go to the school, they're doing a good job. That's kudos to them on the job front. Who knows if they have KPIs and targets, right? So they might be able to say, hey, this is the best way to do it. They could give some advice. And even if the student doesn't know the rep, find out who the rep is and reach out. And that's something, again, they could be doing now proactively, if they think this is a merit appeal is going to be on the table. So now the flip side, a need-based appeal. This is all through the financial aid office, because obviously you guys, they're the ones that are putting out the financial aid award. Each school is going to have their own way of doing it. So just like with merit, find out what their process is. It's pretty common with schools that they have a form and they want you to fill stuff in. You don't want to highlight what they already know. We tell all families on the CSS, don't fill out special circumstances, because this is where we want to bring it up. But even if they didn't know that and they filled it in, we're still going to reach out and talk through it. So there's a method to the madness here. You don't want to write a novel. You want it to be very concrete. The parent typically leads the charge here, because it would be weird for a student to talk about, oh, my dad lost his job, and start throwing out adjusted gross income numbers. That would be a little weird. I personally always have the student send in a note. It's just secondary on the need base. But again, why they want to go to the school if they're just doing a need-based appeal. because that could tip the scale if they realize this kid is really into it. But it's so important. Matt showed you the software for families to really know what this appeal is about. If they're a business owner and maybe expenses were thrown out by the college that Uncle Sam looks at, there's a lot of moving pieces here, and we're really successful at crafting need-based appeals and quite often going back a second time in the right way. It's not negotiating. It is. That's what you're doing with the college, but we don't want people to have that mindset. You're really having a conversation. How much they want to go to that school. There's a psychology behind this, because we have other pros that are behind the scenes at schools, at colleges, Harvard, School of Medicine, MIT, Sloan, the business school. They're like, if a family is a jerk, we might do we really want to deal with them for 4 years? So they need to approach this in the right way and not think of it as like they're buying a used car or a new car.
Peggy, let me just double down on a point that you said that I'm
Sure,
going to share it again. I believe it's in our top 10 tips that we kind of wrap with, but I don't think school counselors can hear this enough times. Probably most of you are familiar with the very end of the CSS profile form, right? Where it kind of gives you it encourages you to say, tell us anything that didn't show up on this financial aid application that we should know about, right? What do they call it, Peggy? Is it the special circumstances?
yeah, it's about special circumstances.
Special
Yeah,
circumstances, right?
right at the end.
And they give you a couple options. We had medical things, we had a business thing, we had a job, or just open-ended, right? Just about everybody puts something here. They essentially, make their appeal case here. This is important, guys. You're leaving that blank. You're going to recommend to all your families you leave that blank, even if you have something that's very material, right? We lost a job. We had some, God forbid, situation. Our prior tax year, the base income year was way higher than it is today, right? These very material things. Do not show your hand. Peggy mentioned it. We have a lot of current financial aid counselors that are on that side of the desk, right? And formal financial aid counselors will say, if people show their hand up front, we'll say it was baked into their appeal and say, yep, we already got, or baked into their offer rather, right? You've already kind of, you know, uh, used your ammunition. Okay. So that's why it is very important and a very smart strategy, a universal strategy. Leave that blank. Okay. And we can't emphasize that enough because it's very counterintuitive. Right. And again, in my experience, most counselors aren't telling all their families, leave that blank, wait for your appeal. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's a tough one because parents will push back, but Peg, I want to share. I want to share. And I'm like, nah, we want to be able to pull that card out later and say, thank you for the aid you offered, but now I need to share some things with you. And then they literally have to take that into account. And that's a whole nother thing. The thing to keep in mind for families is if their current reality, or like for seniors right now, they sent in 2024. If 2025, it's done, obviously. If that was worse for whatever reasons, that's what they need to share. The other piece of advice you got to give them is get your taxes done ASAP when you have kids in college. They need to get, if they do it themselves or they have a CPA, need to say, I'm not extending. I need to have that puppy done, because what the colleges love is, okay, I see your appeal. Let me see your 2025 return, because it's official that honestly the parents are being honest. Some parents pull fast ones, right? So the colleges have to document this. So a completed tax return or a tax transcript, then they're golden. It's there, and there's going to be no debate that this happened. So those are some pointers to give parents as well. But anything where it's a strain on cash flow that they didn't share, like Matt's saying, families have like a younger child that they have to send to a private school for XYZ reasons. Don't share that until you're appealing. Cost is $20,000 a year. We have to do this. That's a strain on cash flow. And then you're kind of pushing the colleges to take that into account in their award. And it can be extremely effective. And if the family casts a wide net, of like schools, it's amazing how different colleges will respond to appeals, and then you can bounce them off each other on appeal, and that it puts the family in the driver's seat, which is hugely powerful. Okay, turn it over to you, Matt.
Cool. So, I won't necessarily talk through every single one of these, but I do want to spend some time on a few that again, are not common knowledge in my opinion. Peg mentioned the tone of this really does matter, right? You want to, and again, I always pick on Ryan Callahan on our team. Peg mentioned him. He's the director of financial aid at Harvard Medical, but he was at MIT before that, Boston College before that. He's been a lifelong financial aid director or on financial aid offices. I call him a robot. Not much personality behind this guy, at least on the surface. I can say that. He's a buddy of mine, but just like very serious, very numbers and data driven. So it always resonates with me when he will remind us of like, guys, you know me, right? You know I'm a pretty serious dude and I take my job seriously. But when a family comes to me and says, look, it was the best day of our lives when our kid got accepted into our dream school, and it was one of the worst days when we got the financial aid offer. Please try to help me make this happen for my kid. Like that matters. We want to get them motivated to advocate for you, right? That's the spirit of what we're trying to communicate. And then we want to make their jobs easy. We want to spoon feed them data. So, for example, this is where we always want to ask for, I don't want to say always, but more often than not, we are asking for a specific amount. Okay. And sometimes those are huge numbers. Like, for example, let me give you another data point that is incredibly relevant when it comes to institutional versus federal SAIs, right? Versus those formulas. Now, most of you are aware that if a college uses the federal SAI and it's a split household family, right? A two household family, and the biological parent completing the FAFSA is remarried, that step parent's information will go on the FAFSA and be treated just as if they're a biological parent. That income, those assets are count for that formula. What is less known, in my opinion, or in my experience, the institutional SAIs, even though they ask for step parents information on the CSS profile, on the non-custodial profile, these colleges are not supposed to count step parent income and assets. That's incredibly important because sometimes, and this happened, it's already happened many times this year. We'll go back to Middlebury, we'll go back to um, NYU, we'll go back to Boston College. I'm just thinking of some recent examples, and we'll ask for another 70,000 more dollars, 65,000 more dollars. I think it was even closer to 80,000 at Middlebury. But the reason being, why are we asking for those insane amounts more money? Because we've seen that they have counted the step parent income and assets when they are not supposed to. And we'll call them on that directly and say, you're only supposed to look at the biological parents' income and assets. Okay. You didn't. So we want you to give the amount of money that your school is supposed to give. So that's why it can be really, really important. And again, why we want to ask for these specific numbers. Peg talked about having leverage. These are big businesses. They compete with one another. Of course, we want to make sure that we are, if Occidental is the first choice, we want to make sure that we are showing them the offer that we got from Pomona, right? One of their, direct competitors. They will absolutely compete with one another, even if it says right on their website, we don't compete with other colleges. We don't look at any offers. I saw somebody, one of the counselors wrote in chat, if you didn't see it, or Q&A, that they contacted, it was Texas A&M recently, and said, hey, we'd like to appeal based on X, Y, and Z. And they said, we don't do appeals unless something happened, right? This has become a more popular tactic for colleges to use to shoo people away. If colleges are to be eligible for federal funds, and they all need to be eligible for federal funds to keep the lights on, they have to hear appeals. They're federally obligated to hear appeals. They're not obligated to award successful appeals, but they have to at least hear them. So we know right out of the gates that's bullshit. Okay. NYU's been the worst player with that this year. And we call them out and publicly shame them. They go on our wall of shame because we say, you've told all these families you don't hear appeals, but here's successful appeals from all these other families, the before and after. So something is not aligning here. Um, okay, this is one that I'll spend a minute on because again, kind of a PhD level inside baseball tip here, and that is that challenge these you want to let me elaborate on this because it's not this was not a good sentence by me here. I wish I could blame somebody else, but challenge expenses not considered on taxes. What does that mean? Okay, a lot of these public schools and private schools do it. Okay, federal methodology schools and institutional methodology schools do it. It's more common with private and institutional methodology schools, but they're going to ask for your tax returns. Okay, not and the all the schedules. If you're a business owner, they're going to ask for your business tax returns. It's not to verify what went on your FAFSA, what went on your CSS profile. What they're doing is they want to look at your expenses. And these guys are much, much stricter than the IRS. And they can do whatever they want. They're going to say, oh, you wrote off depreciation. No colleges count depreciation. That's getting added back in. Okay. Oh, you wrote off X amount in software. You wrote X amount in travel expenses. We're not buying it. We're not going to count it. So unbeknownst to you, these colleges, could you just go back, Peggy? I think
Yeah, I hit the button by accident, but it's not going back.
all good, pal. These colleges will challenge, unbeknownst to the consumer, right? The family, the applicant, they're not counting X amount of expenses that the IRS did count. And they're adding that back in as untaxed income, which is going to increase your SAI, which is going to reduce the amount of need-based financial aid that they give you, unbeknownst to you. So this is why during these appeals, you want to ask these very pointed questions. Did you not count any of the write-offs that the federal government did allow, that the IRS did allow, because we want to challenge this, of course. So again, nobody knows even to ask these questions in your appeal, but it's very, very important, especially at these institutions that are doing this. Okay. I won't belabor this point. Be persistent, demonstrated interest, right? Demonstrated interest. It matters not just in the admissions process, it matters in the financial process as well. These colleges, as they're looking at their appeals, they're trying to get a feel. If we come up with more money, is this family actually going to come here? So that needs to come through, right? And I think the best place for this to come through is through the students. But again, this demonstrated interest concept, you guys are aware of how much more significant it is for a lot of colleges from an admission standpoint. It matters for from a financial standpoint as well. Challenge siblings. What does that mean? Now we know this new FAFSA rule, right? No, the federal methodology no longer cares, for lack of a better word, if you have more than one kid in college. Most of the institutional colleges do, or they're supposed to, but surprise, surprise, we find that oftentimes they are not doing this. So especially at these schools, we're going to say, hey, you guys use the institutional methodology. You still are supposed to consider having more than one kid in school. Challenge them on this. Even schools that use the federal formula, still challenge them on this. We have still had a lot of successful appeals to individual colleges to say, I get it. The formula no longer considers the fact that we have two in school at once. We have to, right? And we would like to appeal based on that. I spent a lot of time talking about challenging the methodology, right? Are you an institutional school that counted step parent income? Are you an institutional school that looked at the federal methodology? We want to call them based on their methodology and what SAI they are anchoring towards, right? Again, these are PhD level tips here, but the more sophisticated and elaborate we are with our appeal, the odds are we're much more likely to have a successful appeal. Challenge home equity, right? So we know that a lot of these institutional methodology schools consider home equity to be fair game. How they justify this historically, none of these colleges are proud of this, right? These institutional methodology schools that count our home equity against us, they're not proud of this. So number one, we're going to call them on this. We're going to say, hey, Boston College, we know, hey, Northwestern, we know that you're an institutional methodology school and therefore you're considering our home equity against us. We can't access that. Right. And how they justified it historically is they said, hey, if we have a homeowner and a non-homeowner and everything else is equal, but one rents and one owns, this one that owns can go borrow at 3%, and this one has to take a plus loan at 8%. Well, guess what? Borrowing against our home is no longer 3% at the moment. So even that justification that I felt to be BS always doesn't hold as much water anymore. So we want to challenge them on that. We have a ton of success there. And then lastly, we are not submitting our enrollment deposit until we've had our appeal. If we need to ask for an extension on that, we will, because appeals committees will absolutely look at that as one of the first things. Okay, here's a family that has submitted an appeal. Have they submitted their deposit? Yes. Yes, they have. Okay, well, it looks like they're coming here no matter what, right? You will lose leverage. So, very, very important tip here.
I will add, because somebody put that in the question in the Q&A or somewhere I saw. You can still appeal if you have a family that did it and they have good grounds for appeal. Doesn't mean you shouldn't appeal, but as Matt said, you'll lose leverage. Just one thing I want to share, just to the first bullet, the color and the background is super, super important for these colleges. Just a quick story of a family that I worked with a couple years ago. Dad is in his low 50s, legally blind. He can't do the job that he used to do. He's sitting on $1.5 million. That is, he needs to share. It's not retirement money. So most people are like, well, he's not going to get a penny. He's sitting on a lot of money. Yeah, I'm a financial planner, like I said. So I said to him, look, we're going to craft an appeal. That's a lot of money, but you also have a younger kid. You've got to support both of these kids through college and support your family into your 80s or 90s. That's not a lot of money when you look at it this way. Did the appeal, and colleges, I forget which school it was, ended up giving him like a $30,000 grant, when on paper, no need-based aid eligibility, because they looked at it and they didn't just say, this is the formula, you've got $1.5 million. They listened to the story and it resonated with them. So just keep that in mind as well. Like that, it's really important to be open about really what's going on with the family.
Yeah, 100%. And you can rip through these quickly, Peggy. I just think it's important that parents specifically see some before and after, right? Obviously, Occidental College, very expensive college, right? Comes up with this decent looking offer initially. We know they're looking at home equity. We just challenged them based on that, right? And after this challenge, they came up with another, I don't know, I think it's I know we'll show the amount in a second here, right? Another almost $30,000 a year. That's $120,000 just because we knew they looked at home equity. We challenged them on this specifically, right? And this is the only thing that we appealed on is another $30,000 a year. And then I think the next one is from BU. This is a business owner, initially nada, right? Bupkis, $3,500 federal direct student loan, all based on how they valued their business, right? And all the expenses that they didn't consider. First, they came up with another, I think it was, they came up with, $28,000 or $30,000. The family's loving us. They're like, that's incredible. We went from 0 to 30. We knew that still wasn't enough money given the situation. We went back again, another $16,000. So a total of, whatever it was, ultimately $51,000 here. So I think it's important for parents to see, like, if you deploy some of these strategies, right? Colleges will change their award letters. Does it always happen? Of course not. Is it always the astronomical numbers? No, especially if we don't have a lot of, these very material things. But even if we don't have material things, we're still always expecting to go back and get another $5,000, right? Times 4 years, that's 20 grand. So that is very meaningful. I want
want
to
to add, and Matt's going to share his screen, but I just want to add, because you all know this, but families, they might not share it, get really stressed about, well, if we ask, is my child going to lose their admission? And and so I always am very open with families. That's not going to happen. This is a part of the process. The worst thing that happens is you're told no. So
Right.
just so
And I
they're
think,
not thinking this but not sharing, and then they don't follow through on an appeal because of it.
or they'll say, is it going to look bad on them? Is there going to be a black X next to their name when they start, their freshman year next year? And oh, this is the annoying family that, no, that is not going to happen. Right. So this is something that is hot off the presses here. I just put the link in the chat for you guys, but what we're doing is a financial aid kind of and scholarship curriculum for families with our high school partners right throughout the year, talking about, all the major pain points, right? So our first presentation will be kind of financial aid 101. Here's how this whole thing works. Then we'll go line by line presentations through the FAFSA, through the CSS profile. Obviously, we're doing this when it's topical in September and October. Then we have a presentation on private scholarships and IDOC and verification, usually in December, January. And then right now, right, we're very busy with the seniors focusing on understanding award letters and appeals, right? We do a version of this presentation that we just did for you all, a little more, you know, it's very similar, but again, we understand that a lot of these families don't have any expertise around this stuff like most of you do. And then once we get after May 1st, we will present on, okay, I know where I'm going to college. I know what it costs. How the heck am I going to pay for this thing? If I have some resources, when should I use what? If I need to borrow, should I do a plus loan versus a private loan versus whatever, right? We have are answering these questions for families that I think are hard for you all to answer. So here's what I want you to do. I put this in the chat right now. If you want us to do this with your high school, just we need some of this basic information here, right? And what you can do right now, if you want, is you can pick dates right now. Okay, you can pick dates right now for each of these presentations. Okay, if it's just too early for you, just say none of these work or we're not sure yet, right? You don't have to pick dates right now. Again, if you pick dates, we can lock that down for you right now. But again, no worries if it's just too early. Just say we're not sure yet for each of these and send that over to us. Okay. So again, if you do pick dates for any and all these, we will get those on the calendar, confirm them with you. They will be for your high school. So we put together the invites for you. We set up the Zoom links. We spoon feed you the email copy, right? So it's very easy to say, sign up for these presentations and you're off to the races here. So again, you just got to you got a sample of what one of these presentations look like. The appeal presentation in 2 weeks, you'll get a good idea of the how to pay the bill and how to borrow presentation from us. But again, we would love to partner with you guys if we don't already. I know a lot of our high school partners are on here already, but
Yeah, Matt,
please
I
don't
will just
hesitate.
chime in here real quick. Any existing partners here?
Of
Um,
course.
we've been back and forth, letting you know that we're putting together all these dates. Clearly, we have these dates now. So you'll be hearing from either myself, Matt, or Lisa, with something, almost identical to this for your school to pick your date. So you'll be hearing from us as well. This isn't your only time for our existing partners.
Yep. Thank you. Great point. Yeah. So again, we're excited about that, right? And again, if at a minimum, even if you don't want to partner in any capacity, just make sure that parents are aware of the resources, have them set up their free MyCap accounts, have your underclassmen start learning. Here's what their SAIs are. Have your seniors, understanding what these award letters actually mean, and then can they go back and get a better deal? How do they do that? How much more should they be asking? So, and again, we know how much you all have on your plate, so we're doing everything we can to try to take at least some of that off your plate and just make it easy for you to, distribute and get the message out there. Yeah, and Misty, if just a good question, the if a school uses their the federal methodology here, let me just share my screen again. The only way that I know is they just have to create a free account, right? And we will tell them instantly what their institutional SAI is. I don't know anywhere else where you can find out your institutional SAI. This is not reverse engineered. This is not a best guess. These federal SAIs come from the Department of Education, their formula exactly. The institutional SAI comes from College Board, their formula exactly. And then there's a spectrum within the institutional SAI specifically. Okay. There is with the federal SAI too, where each individual college, some colleges look at all home equity, some look at some look at, none, right? We have every single one of every single college, all 4,000 undergraduate schools, their exact formulas on here. So when we're projecting what you're going to pay at a school, we're incredibly confident with that projection, right? We're like an instant net price calculator for all colleges, except the big difference is our net price calculator is accurate. Okay. We put our money where our mouth is there, and you can go see this on our website or on our socials, whatever. If anybody finds any family, any counselor, anybody that a college's net price calculator is more accurate than ours is, we'll give you $100. If you find 5 schools where their net price calculators are more accurate than our projections, we'll give you $500. Okay, so we welcome that challenge. Obviously, we know we are very rarely giving that $100 out. Otherwise, we wouldn't offer it, but we're happy to because that'll make us more accurate at those particular colleges. But please put us up to the challenge, and that's where we don't know how else to put our money where our mouth is other than actually doing that. Peggy, Billy, any parting words here for part 2?
No, it just this is part of the family's journey. It's a piece. It's most of the time it's a part of their journey. So it's just like everything in this process, there's a lot of moving pieces. So hopefully today didn't overwhelm you, but gave you good solid foundation around the whole appeals piece.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, the question is, are we available for juniors too? Our biggest challenge, and we would love your help here, is to get more families more engaged earlier in the process, right? As a matter of fact, we're starting to make some initiatives for the rising 8th graders that are starting to, you're starting to think about, inheriting next year. We want them to be thinking about this stuff, right? Because there is a very straight line between families that get engaged and educated early and successful outcomes, not surprisingly, right? Now, obviously, most people pay attention when their hair's on fire and, oh my God, I have to, deal with some of this stuff right now. We would love your help in getting more people engaged earlier in the process. It is, again, one of our biggest challenges that we will not be giving up on.
Yeah, and just kind of doubling down on both what Peg and Matt said. You know, in our experience, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but my experience, one of the biggest mistakes, right, that I've seen is parents wait until senior year when they submit the FAFSA to understand what their student aid index is, and they understand they start learning about what they're eligible for in terms of scholarships, financial aid. And at that point, we're talking, November of senior year, it's kind of too late, right? And this is by design. The colleges set this up where you go shopping first. They tell you what it's going to cost you at the end, and then, you're running and taking on way more debt than you should, right? So our approach is kind of flip it on its head. Obviously, today we focused on appeals, right? And it's still part of that strategy is getting as much money from these colleges as possible. But we are actually even starting to invite for some of our high school partners, inviting rising 9th graders. So current 8th graders, rising 9th, which I happen to have one of those, to start getting them educated, even as they're approaching, as they enter high school, right? To understand the fact that they're only about a year away from their base income year. So, sorry to harp on that, but I'm pretty passionate about, getting folks activated early on.
Well, and I'll just tag team, parents understand this, then they can set expectations for their kids, which I did this ×2. It relieves a lot of stress. So you don't have kids getting their heart set on stuff, and then the parents have a big gulp about, we can't afford this. And then, like Billy said, they either take on too much debt, do a loan on a 401k, crazy stuff. All of that can be avoided if they start early and they
Well, and Peggy
understand and they
too.
set that expectation for their kids.
Sorry to cut you off, Peggy, but it kind of reminds me how we joke and we have this conversation with a lot of our partners. It's like, let us be the bad guy, right? No mom or dad wants to tell their kids, oh, hey, this is not gonna, this is not financially responsible. Sorry, look elsewhere. Let us be the bad guy. Let my cat be the bad guy, and that's a rough way to say it, but it's really just kind of helping 17, 18-year-olds and parents, kind of see into the future of what this impact will be, right? So yeah, let us be the bad guy.
Yeah, well, and in another, if we want to soften it a little bit, which I'm fine not softening it, Bill, but this is and is something we've been sharing with counselors in particular, right? Every family has this viewpoint into their affordability profile. So right now, again, as you are meeting with juniors, okay, saying, hey, here's 20 colleges that are going to be a great fit for you guys, safety target reach, culturally, academically, geographically, etc. Say, put them in here and this is going to give them their safety target reach from an affordability standpoint. And look at Williams is a $100,000 college, but for this family, they're going to get a lot of need-based financial aid. So it's still going to be a great outcome from an ROI standpoint, right? Based on their budget and based on how much need-based and or scholarships that they're going to get. So this is, I don't know if it's a bad guy. This is an unbiased third party that's giving them expectations of how this is again, where it fits in their affordability profile, what the ROI is likely going to be. So I always think if I'm you guys, one of the biggest challenges, and of course we hear this every day, is like, hey, I can give tons of schools that are gonna be great fits for my kids, again, academically and culturally and all this. But I have no clue if it's within their family's budget or if they're going to get financial aid or scholarships. So, and you're not supposed to. That's impossible, right, for you guys to know. But here's a tool that can instantly give them and again, if they want to go deeper in terms of like why the platform gives that context. But I think it's important for you guys to see like this is at everybody's disposal, right? They can use this right now. You can use it if you want as you are having those conversations with your these class 2027 families. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you. Appreciate you showing up, asking great questions for an hour here. And yeah, and I get this question. Yeah, um, yeah, and the short answer is you can always ask, right? You can always ask, even if this is the Hope Scholarship in Georgia, which is a very generous program in Georgia. Can we ask for out-of-state programs to match this? Of course, we can always ask. Now, again, I would want to calibrate expectations based on the school, but asking is 75% of the negotiation. Thank you so much, guys. So again, show up in 2 weeks, please. Share this course with other counselors if you want, or share it within your high school, within your district, whatever, if you want. You'll get the recording tomorrow, and please sign up to meet with us or take advantage of our education, our curriculum, to have us coach up your families if you haven't already.
See those emojis, Matt? I love them.
Give Uncle Bill some emojis. Peggy loves them too. Peggy
I
loves
do.
them.
I
Not the
love
same.
them.
Oh, the hearts are coming out. Let's go.
That juices us up.
It
Juices us.
does. Oh yeah. Well, what took you guys so long? Jeez, they've been doing this the entire hour.
We got to say that at the top, Bailey.
I know.
It's
I
your
know.
job. That's your job. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
great day.
Bye bye.